When I first met Matt, I thought he was really scary.
I remember meeting Maggie and I was scared, intimidated, you know. This doyen of, you know, Australian cooking.
I couldn't have been more wrong. He's the biggest softie.
Maggie could ask me to do anything and I'd do it, you know.
I've invited some of Australia's most loved cooks and chefs to create a recipe that can be whipped up in an aged care home.
I'm Matt Moran. I'm a chef, restaurateur and farmer, and I'm joining Maggie Beer's Chef's Challenge. This is all dedicated to my grandmother, Valda Alice.
Today, I'm going to cook his beautiful lamb shoulder with fabulous roasted vegetables.
If anyone I'm going to trust with a roast, it's going to be Maggie Beer.
I made some brine earlier. This is a chefy thing to do, which makes the lamb juicy and tender. This is a mix of about 4 litres of water with 600 grams of salt and 400 grams of caster sugar, a teaspoon of black peppercorns and of juniper berries and of cloves. I brought this all to a boil at really high temperature and then let it sit for a moment and then strain all the bits out of it. I'll pour my brine over the lamb so it covers it and leave it to soak for a couple of hours in the fridge.
I sort of grew up in a country environment in the early days, and I used to see my grandparents quite often, and I just remember my first real cooking memories are from my grandmother. You know, whether it was a lamb roast or whether it was a beautiful rice pudding or date scones, you know, they were my first real food memories.
It's time to pop the lamb that's been well brined into the casserole dish. I'm going to toss in 2 smashed cloves of garlic, some sprigs of rosemary, and about 1 litre of chicken stock, and pop it into the oven at 110 degrees for anywhere between 3 to 5 hours.
My grandmother had the most incredible date scones. And, you know, in her later years, I kept trying to reproduce them and I could never, ever get it right. And, you know, I would sit there and watch her make them, but there was never a recipe. It was just a little bit of this and a little bit of that.
The 3 beetroots have been washed and trimmed, a little bit of salt and some balsamic vinegar and some white wine vinegar, and put them into the oven. They'll take at least 45 minutes.
Did my nan influence my career? Look, there was definitely a little bit of an interest in cooking. You know, it was really mainly, I suppose, in the end that I just wanted to leave school and I wanted to do anything that, you know, would give me a job and get me out of school. And that sort of slight interest in cooking. But it wasn't until I actually really started my apprenticeship that I actually fell in love with food. And that's, you know, been a love affair now for nearly 40 years. But, you know, I used to, you know, being a young apprentice, because I was only 15 when I started, and going to see Nan, and, you know, I was always much more interested in what she was doing, you know, once I started cooking. But also I was, you know, always trying to show off to her too. But she'd never have it. She'd always like, you know, this is the way that I cook the lamb leg, you know, always overcooked. If you don't like it, well, bad luck.
I'll move on to my pumpkin now. I've cut about 1/4 of a Japanese pumpkin into wedges. And Matt, I'm diverting from your recipe a bit, just to make it easier for me. I'm going to melt your butter with honey because I want to be able to put all these flavours you've given me. 2 tablespoons of honey while that mixes in with the butter as it gets warm. Now to the other ingredients. We have some coriander, we have some sweet paprika. Wow. Oh my gosh, he's given me chili. He knows I don't eat chili. All of those ingredients, I'm going to place this over the pumpkin, all those flavors, even the chili, and a bit of your olive oil too. And it's now going to go into the oven.
Nan was very independent, and she lived at Woy Woy, and she passed away in 2000 2012. Her husband, my grandfather George, he passed away probably a good 20 years prior to that, and she was making date scones right up until then.
I've let the lamb cook long enough now and it's rested, so I'll uncover it and I'm going to pop it back into a high oven for about 15 minutes because I want it to form a crust.
Nan was incredibly hardworking, and you know what you want a Nan to be, you know, she'd always be up for a cuddle.
I'm going to serve this with a mint salsa, and to make it, I need to just place the garlic and mint and parsley into a small processor. Matt wants me to add some Chardonnay vinegar. That's a very chefy thing. I think a little bit of white wine vinegar will do just fine. Remember, we're being budget conscious.
Whenever I see a scone, or whenever I see a rice pudding, or whenever I see rhubarb, and at the farm I've got some rhubarb just growing outside the front door, and has been for 20 years, and never planted it there, never put it there, but it just pops up every year. So, you know, it's a nice little reminder of Nan.
It's all come together at this beautiful shoulder of lamb, chickpeas around this lovely coloured vegetables. Now, that lamb looks so beautiful. I don't want to cover too much of it up. There we have a really spectacular dish of beautiful food. So, okay, Matt, how did you score on the challenge? It looks fantastic. I know it will be delicious. Every element will be fantastic. Is it simple? Matt, you failed me.
So Maggie cooked my lamb. She thought it was a little bit too complex.
There are so many parts of this to make it so special, and every bit will add to it.
You know, that's where Maggie should put her spin and be creative and tone it down a little bit, Maggie, you know? You got to take your hat off to her. Like, you know, she's on this incredible mission, and it's not going to be an easy one. She's a generous, selfless person, you know, trying to better people's lives, and a lot of people. And that is the true Maggie Beer. She's one of the most beautiful people I've ever met.